Hi everyone, thanks for listening to my presentation on understanding students with ADHD. I'm sorry for the brightness, I'm in the car right now, but hopefully it won't be too distracting. So how many students with ADHD are currently being served in the United States? 6.1 million children have ever been diagnosed with ADHD, but right now at this present moment, there are 5.4 million children diagnosed and being taught in our schools. So how has the number of students identified increased in recent years? Well, according to CHAD, since 1998, the percentage of children identified has jumped from 6.1% to 10.2% in 2016. So a 4% jump in almost 20 years is pretty big. And there's a couple of reasons that may be. One reason that people think is that ADHD may be being overdiagnosed. One reason that it could be being overdiagnosed is that the symptoms of ADHD are so vast. So a child that just maybe has a lot of energy and is fidgety could be diagnosed with ADHD when they don't really have it. Another reason that the rates have increased could be advances in medical technology. Some children, such as premature babies that would not have survived if it weren't for the advances in medical technology, could go on to have ADHD since the rates of ADHD are higher in premature children. Another one is there's fewer stigmas about mental health nowadays, so parents aren't afraid to go to their doctor and ask if their child has ADHD. Another reason is that we've expanded the definition of ADHD to include children that are not just hyperactive but also inattentive. So what are some specific characteristics of students with ADHD? Some of those symptoms of ADHD include inattentiveness, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. And those can come in any combination. The most common form of ADHD includes students with all three of these symptoms, but there also are milder forms of students that are maybe just inattentive or maybe just hyperactive, and they're not all the same symptoms, or they're not all to the same degree as other students with ADHD. The inattentiveness could include maybe spacing out during lectures and not being able to focus on tests. Students that are hyperactive are fidgety, they can't sit still for long and just want to run around and disrupt. Why is it difficult for students with ADHD to participate in school? Well, children with ADHD have trouble focusing. They often can't sit still to take exams. They fall behind because they can't focus on lessons. They're inattentive and daydream during class. And as stated before, all children with ADHD don't have all of these symptoms. So some students might be able to sit still and take their exams, but they just can't remember what was on the test because they weren't able to focus on the material. And some students may have all the knowledge, but they're just too fidgety to sit still during class. Prior to 2004, ADHD was not listed as a specific disability or learning disability in IDEA, but after 2004 it was listed in one of the 13 categories under other health impairments. So it's not in there with the other learning disabilities, but it's kind of on its own as a lesser disability. So some effective class-wide interventions for students with ADHD and students without ADHD are to keep assignments and lectures short. So for that would be for students that have trouble focusing and that are hyperactive. Keeping the lessons short allows them to be able to understand the material, the little bit of material that you show, and also gives them kind of an endpoint to look forward to. Another one is to teach students to take notes. So this could help those students that have trouble focusing and are inattentive. You can teach them to listen and take notes on what you're teaching, and then they can look back at those notes for a reference. Another one is to combine students into groups. So this could be combining students with symptoms of ADHD together, and then maybe having more of a hands-on approach teaching those students, or you could combine students with ADHD and without ADHD together intentionally, so that the students without can kind of help the ones that do show those symptoms. You can also use scheduling, structure, and organization. So one thing that has been shown to really help students that have symptoms of ADHD is to schedule out their time and keep their schedule consistent every day, so they know exactly what they are going to be doing. And having structure and organization in lesson plans is very important. Another one is planned physical movement. So if you can schedule out a few times during the day, probably in addition to recess, that maybe after each lesson giving kids a stretch break, or having a game time where they get to get up and move around. Some kind of planned physical movement like that would be very beneficial to students with hyperactive ADHD that have trouble sitting still. So thank you for listening to my presentation on students with ADHD. Here's my reference page, as you can see. In this presentation, we went over what ADHD is, how the rise of HD and some factors that might affect that, and then some strategies and interventions that you can use in the classroom for children with ADHD and without ADHD. And as we said, the students with ADHD are not all that different from the ones without. They just need a little bit more help and guidance. And hopefully with some of the things that we talked about in this presentation, you can apply that in your own classroom. Thank you.